right, back with the death lineup. But before we get to the show, just want to let folks know that we do have a new podcast in this feed called We Want Winners. Myself and Roderick Adams will be back after the 49ers and Seahawks this weekend, probably about, 20 to 30 minutes after the game is over. And we'll do a live stream talking about that game. And then we will put that audio in the podcast feed at BSPN. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the world of Warriors basketball. Actually, you know where I want to start. You did a pretty cool interview the other day, and that I think it got pushed out. I think you put it out today, right?
Yeah.
So who was the interview with, and how did you guys even get it?
So the interview was with John Krasinski of The Athletic. He covers the Minnesota Timberwolves, and my buddy Obi literally just slid in his DMs and asked him to be on the pod, and he was down, and he was very cool about it, and he shouted us out, and I told him that if he travels, because I asked him if he travels with the team, if he travels for away games, and he said sometimes, but I told him if he ends up in Golden State, if he ends up in the Bay Area, I'll dinner on me just to continue to pick his brain, because he was kind of on a time limit, and so I didn't get to ask all the questions I wanted to, and I'll get to do that if I get to see him again.
So what'd you guys talk about?
All Timberwolves, but one of the questions that I wanted to ask was that Wiggins for D'Lo trade. Because I think we all know who the winner was in the trade. There's no way you can look at it with saying that the Timberwolves won the trade. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to ask him, he's been covering Andrew Wiggins for so long, and we've heard the whole he looks like an all-star for 5 games, and then for 15 games he just disappears. So I wanted to ask him, did Wiggins really need a change of scenery to become useful, or is he on the Warriors? Is he just the same thing and it's just getting outshadowed by all the other good things that are going for us?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool, and it's always cool when you get to talk to somebody who's a little bit in the know, not only about the team, but I mean, the guy, he does podcasts as well. He does interviews. So from that perspective, it's always cool to talk to a professional. So glad that you guys are able to do that. Hopefully, maybe bring him on another time. And he seemed to be very happy with how it went, and he put all of you guys over on Twitter, so that was cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so let's talk about some of this stuff that's going on. And I guess the place where I want to start is this in-season tournament that has been rumored. Shams, he had a tweet, and I'll bring the tweet up here, to set the framework for what is being discussed. And it's not for this year, it would be for next year. And I guess the WNBA does something very similar. And I have the rules of how the WNBA does it, and we'll look at that in a second. But this didn't really explain anything to me. So he wrote current framework as soon as 23-24. Cup games through November. 8 teams advance to single elimination final in December, with 22 other 22 continue with regular season. All games part of normal 82 games schedule. 1 extra for 2 final teams. What are cup games? There's no explanation about what this is. I was very confused with this tweet, and I searched and searched and searched, and I couldn't really find any good information about what is going on. Did you take anything away from what is being discussed?
From that specific tweet, there's really nothing. I've heard that it's all the players who win get $1 million. And Lester Quinones is jumping up and down, going nuts. But Steph was about to become a billionaire with a lifetime deal with Under Armour. That doesn't do nothing. So I'm just interested on how they're going to incentivize it, because you want the players to be really interested in this. You want them to really try for it. And I've been hearing ideas, and I've been floating ideas in my head, but I haven't come to a good one yet, in my opinion. But, I think that's the main thing. What does this imply for the regular season? Is this something does this help your playoff odds, or, and then how can you incentivize it for players to actually give a F?
Yeah, the incentives are tough because, like you said, someone like Steph, it would be 1/50th of his salary, to win $1,000,000. But it could, there's some fun in doing it for some of the younger guys who are maybe on a two-way or something. I think charity is a pretty big deal, but all of these players have different charities they support. So I don't know how you would be able to do that.
And then with the charity thing too, is like they do that with the All-Star game, and we could see quarters 1 through 3 is like nothing still, you know?
Yeah. Could you? Uh, yeah, I don't know. There are opportunities, I guess, for sponsorships, and maybe there can be actually more money than just
Mhm.
the million. But yeah, they're gonna have to get creative, and whoever's the big brain with the marketing is gonna have to come up with something very interesting in order to make this happen.
You know
So,
what I wanna know what I thought of before I immediately shot it down? I probably sat on it for, like, a night, and then I kinda thought about it some more, and I was like, "Ah, that probably doesn't work." You know how supermaxes are there's requirements. It has to do with, like, all NBA team
uh-huh.
nods, I think that's how you get a supermax. Like, what if the winning team, the best player or something was then eligible if he wasn't eligible already? But then you could say, like, well, then who would what does it matter to the guys who, 1, are already eligible, 2, already have it, and 3, let's say Donovan Mitchell becomes eligible to get supermax after winning this in-season tournament, then is he gonna care next year?
And what about the teams? Like, why would Steve Kerr want to put his players through the rigor in this early season tournament, knowing that April, May, and June is what counts for the Warriors?
Yeah, no, they're going to have to make do some like do something that helps benefit for the getting to the playoffs. Like Slater floated a guaranteed playoff spot, like a 6 seed, but then what's stopping a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves from just sitting Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert from February to June?
Yep. Yep. That is definitely the other side of that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, well, maybe you get, to go over the salary cap or something if you win this
What about an
tournament.
extra home game? Like, what
Mhm.
about home? What if you get the home? Not that the 1 seed gets. Oh, but then what does the 1 seed care?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
Well, you know how the baseball playoffs are happening for the wild card? Do you see how that works?
The 3 wild cards.
Yeah. So, the first series is a 3-game series,
Mm-hmm.
and the 2 teams that get the bye, they don't have to play, but the
Mm-hmm.
other 6 teams who are involved, they have to play. I think, if I'm
Ooh,
not
a bye.
mistaken, the home team hosts every game. Like, there's no there you don't go to the other team's park or something like that. So I wonder if you could, flip it instead of you would get but then, but then if you do that and you get 5 home games out of the 7, then you have teams losing to try to get out of there's like no real
Mm.
right way to gimmick this whole thing, which is why I think it's a little weird. But I don't know. Does the regular season need something? Like,
I think it does.
does it?
I feel like the regular season, it's like, I mean, there's no way you could ever do it how football does it, but football is just always perfect because it's just 1 game a week. But I feel
Yeah.
like there's just this big time period where why should you care, right? And I will always care, but to the average fan, like, what does it matter that X team is playing at X team on TNT on Friday night?
But
Um,
don't we already have sort of built-in special events? Like, season starts in October, and then we get to Christmas, and Christmas is like the big day. So you got opening day,
mhm.
opening night, then you got Christmas. And then I think it's more so from Christmas to All-Star
All-Star.
game, where maybe there's a little bit of a malaise, and maybe All-Star to the playoffs, there's a little bit of a malaise. I don't know if we need something in October or November to kick off the season. Um, and also there's something around, guys in the beginning of the season, uh, really pushing them super hard in super important games might not be the best thing either. So they have a lot to consider to work this thing out. But the way that it's been communicated, I don't really see too much of a benefit. But I was reading up on how the WNBA does the Commissioner's Cup. So I'm reading directly from the WNBA website. The Commissioner's Cup is an annual in-season competition which features 61 games this year, 10 designated regular season cup games, first home game and first road game against conference opponents, with a prize pool of $500K in the championship game and at least $165K in charitable donations throughout this year's series. At the end of Commissioner's Cup play, the team with the highest winning percentage in each conference will face off in the championship game. New this year, the championship game will take place at the home venue. And so if we go back to what Chom's wrote, if you go to this championship game in this, whatever this in-season tournament is going to be called, you actually have to play an extra game. You have 83 games instead of 82 games for the season. So are these players like, everything is based around an 82 game season, their paychecks, right? So they get another game added to that check, or is it just this is what the season is and this is what your salary is? And the other thing is, for the WNBA way that they're doing it, the first home game and first road game against conference opponents are the designated season cup games. So if the Warriors are at home against the Lakers and that's their first cup game, and then they're on the road against the Clippers and that's their second cup game, and then the Pistons come to town, or they're just like, this game doesn't matter. We're just playing our entire bench and this isn't a cup game, so who cares? That could be weird too.
Yeah. I mean, there's not the best way. Like, I've heard draft picks as an incentive, but why do the players care about that? Like, how can you find a way for, it to benefit the team and the players? Extra $15 million, it doesn't count against your luxury tax, but why do the players care?
Yeah.
Just got to find a way for them to care.
Yeah. So before I say no, like, I don't want to be like a no on it, but before I'm like, oh, this sounds like a good idea, like, I just need more information, because the information that we have right now is not great, and then we don't even know if what we're thinking is correct anyways.
Yeah, and I mean, I could be convinced. I don't really feel a specific way about it, but I just care. Like, if I get to see, I'd rather not be in October and like you said, find a way to put it between February and April, or Christmas and February, just to get another thing in there. But I think it could be cool if the players are really trying. Like, I will want to watch. So they just need to find a way to make them do it.
All right, so you read through this Steph Curry interview in the Rolling Stone, and here's the photo again. We're showing this for the video folks. What's the most interesting thing that you learned in that interview? The interviewer, or the author of the piece, was Matt Sullivan, who works for Rolling Stone, previously worked for the New York Post, and has written a book. So I guess I don't know what the relationship is between the two of them, but I guess he followed Steph around and did like 5 different interviews to piece this thing together.
Sounds like he did more than Under Armour did for Steph this summer. I think some of the interesting things is like, we know Steph is like a cocky guy. But he like presents himself and not in that way unless he like really gets going. And so I'm not surprised when he gets cocky, but like, it still is a little bit like, oh shit, like, I forgot that this guy, kind of has that to him. But I think another interesting thing was, I didn't know a business partner like cheated him, like how that happened to the like Rihanna, and how that happened to like LeVar Ball, I think, as well. I didn't know that happened to him. I thought that was pretty shocking.
That hasn't been out there. I mean, I haven't heard it, but they were using that as an example of when he has gotten really mad. Like, they're talking about this temper that he has, what did they call it, like Wardell mode or something,
Yeah,
versus like
I've never heard that.
the normal calm demeanor. Well, who uses Wardell is the
Marcus.
well, yeah, Marcus uses his name, but um, don't the Light Years guys use Wardell to describe like a different version of Steph?
Oh,
Maybe I've got
well, I mean,
might
because
got it
I
confused.
just read Marcus's book, and almost each chapter is like a different version of Steph that you're learning
Hmm.
about. And I want to say
Hmm.
Wardell was in there, but I don't know if I don't know if it was for the purpose that Rolling Stone was using it for.
Yeah, I think the thing that I was most interested in, well, there were the Kevin Durant comments, right?
Yeah,
Where
that's what caught the media's
yeah,
attention, or
that's
like,
what went around the media, which
mhm.
is the idea that Steph was down 100% to play with Durant. And I think it's pretty like for him to say that, he also knows how hard it would have been to trade for him. And so there's not a whole lot of risk for him to say that, but I want to believe that he truly loved those 3 years cuz it's like the best basketball that
We'll
you
ever
could ever
see.
see. So you go back to Showtime Lakers and that era of the Celtics. I'm sure those fan bases see that time as like the best. And then obviously the Bulls have two different three peats, and their fans probably see those as the best. But you know, the way that they played basketball and just the attention that those teams had, like it was nuts. It almost feels like it was like so long ago, but really it's not. Like it's only like 3 years ago. But I really liked the idea that Steph and KD get along, and Steph seems to give him the benefit of the doubt. And he says, he's a little bit misunderstood. There's a little bit of a trust thing there with him, but ultimately, he's a team guy and X, Y, and Z. So I thought
Mhm.
that was cool, and obviously that's what the sports writers or the bloggers are going to run with. But the thing that I thought was most interesting, and they used this name twice. So somebody either I kind of wonder if Tiger Woods stiffed Steph in some way, because there was two separate comments in this piece about how Steph has done more for minority golfers than Tiger Woods has ever done. So I found that to be like, wow, like what did Tiger do to you guys? Um, because Tiger's the most famous golfer to ever play,
Yeah.
and he's one of the greatest, or one of the greatest golfers, whatever however you want to describe that, who has ever played. And you would think that on that level, Steph and Tiger, not say that they would be friends. I'm sure they're quite different people if you know the Tiger Woods story. Tiger Woods a little bit closer to like the Michael Jordan personality than the Steph personality, I would think. But it just struck me as really weird that Tiger gets pulled into this thing in two different quotes, as if he just, it sort of is like, oh yeah, Tiger's the one who should have the most influence, but here's this basketball player who's got the most influence. And I'm sure
Yeah.
Tiger has done his stuff. I just found that part interesting because Steph's not a golfer. Steph is a basketball player. Um,
I
the other thing that I liked though was the Obama stuff in the beginning. Like that was
That was
pretty
cool.
cool. That was
That
pretty
was cool.
funny. And Steph is he's a Christian. He has a liberal stance on a lot of things, which is kind of an interesting, you know, disposition for him. And there was the thing about that he said he would like to take this moment back when in North Carolina there was the issue with the bathrooms, and he had made the statement that I hope that we can still play in in Charlotte for the All-Star game, which was a little deaf to
Yeah.
the reality of the situation, right? And so he admitted, like, yeah, I wish I could take that one back because I needed to know more about what I was talking about, which
Yeah.
is a thing, right? Like,
And
and the reason why I wanted to talk about this with you is because of your school upbringing, right? Like you had a lot of that in your upbringing, and I imagine what you think about those learnings. You sort of use them, but you also look at them from a different mindset as an adult now versus when you were a school child or even in high school.
Yeah. I personally feel like I fell a little deaf to like some of the agendas that the Christian school was trying to push on me. I don't know. I just wasn't even totally paying attention to the academics to begin with, so I wasn't paying attention to the agendas they were trying to push. But I thought that it was interesting in the article. They start with Obama, they kind of start with politics, and it kind of felt like 60% of the article was
Mm-hmm.
politics, right? And I feel like it's interesting to see how religion is playing into some of his beliefs, because that wasn't the only thing that I feel like religion caused him to be deaf to a situation, or maybe want to take a situation back. But he hasn't said he wants to take this back yet, but
Mm-hmm.
he says he's neither pro-choice nor pro-life. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was interesting. He chose not to speak on the Roe v. Wade thing. And I do agree that I feel like athletes are like athletes are like expected to say
Mm-hmm.
something and use their platform when something happens. And I'm not necessarily sure if I agree with that or not, that they should be like forced to or feel like the need that they have to, because I feel like sometimes athletes, at least in my Twitter sphere, it's mainly sports. I feel like athletes are held to a higher standard than some of the damn politicians we have in our country. If they don't
Mm-hmm.
say something, or if they say the wrong thing, or if LeBron actually doesn't read a book when he says he does read a book, like why is that a bigger deal than Ted Cruz saying that guns should continue to be legal, or whatever the hell that statement was? But anyways, I do agree with Steph in that aspect, where it's like, shit, does he really have to say something about everything? But I feel like that statement, I'm neither pro-choice nor pro-life, is it seems like a combatant of the religion playing a part into politics.
And the fact that his mom had an abortion right before he was born, right?
Yep. Yep.
So that's another wrinkle to that thing. Um, you doing podcasts on the sports sphere, you probably don't feel the need to feel you probably don't feel like you need to be up to date on a lot of the political things that are going on, because you're like, oh, I'm doing sports stuff. That's kind of what I need to know. And I remember being in class with one of my professors, my radio professor, and he was just like, you have to be aware of everything. Like, you have to be aware of politics and religion and world history and what's going on in Ukraine. Now, I'm not saying that I know everything about all of those things either, but I do attempt to know what's going on from a maybe back in the day it was newspapers. You'd kind of read up on stuff, and now it's, we're getting most of our news through podcasts or through websites that we follow or whatever. But that is a thing for Steph that he probably didn't think that he needed to know when he came into the NBA, because the world changed, right? So many things happened in the world, and then he felt he had to be more updated and have a more worldly view and have an opinion, because somebody was going to ask him about it. And we see it with Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr has a sharp political mind. Like, I think it's funny because the folks that Trump goes after, this is years ago, but those folks that he went after were really people who knew more about the subject than he did. And when Trump was spewing out some of the things that he did, he uses an interesting tactic of sort of being attacking. And when somebody is attacked, they get defensive, and then they have to sort of defend being attacked, and it kind of takes them away from their point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Kerr is not as famous as Donald Trump, but he has a public stage and he has a public forum. Steph Curry, Twitter follower for Twitter follower or whatever, he's probably just as or more famous than Donald Trump. So he doesn't have to be defensive in any way. He could focus on what the thing is and then move on. Whereas the Trump trick is to get people to react
Mm-hmm.
very emotionally and then fight, like, and then be uncivil. Whereas Steph and Steve Kerr, they're like, yeah, I get it. I know what he's doing. And here's what we're going to say. Boom. and then they move on. And so they have that platform to be able to speak in that way, and it's been cool to see them speak in that way. Uh, I don't know, the who knows that I sort of got a sense of, does Steph want to get into politics? Is
Mhm.
this something that he's interested in, or does he like being influential with his voice and his brand to back the people that he really believes in? That's also how he can do it as well. He doesn't
Yeah.
have to actually be a politician.
I thought it was interesting also how he said, I think he said like that whoever the Democratic nominee is should, be as attacking as Trump was or kind of match his energy. I don't know if
Mhm.
I agree with that, but I think
Well,
that's
the
something he
Michelle Obama line was, "When they go low, we go high," which a lot of people took as why are we letting them bully us kind of thing. So all that stuff is very interesting, and it's essentially like, I just see it as like public relations or marketing. Like it's just like just one person marketing themselves in a way, and people will bite, or people will have an opinion or whatever. All right, I didn't mean for it to delve completely into politics, but like you said, that was a big piece of the article.
it
So
was like 60% of it.
definitely read it, take a look. Steph is, I wouldn't say he's completely an open book, but I was surprised at a lot of the things that he decided to talk about. So it
Agreed.
was a good look at him.
Agreed.
Okay. So last thing that I kind of wanted to hit, we'll probably have a little bit more of an interesting show as far as the actual team is concerned, because next week when we do this show will be a couple of days before they open up camp, and we should talk about somebody who I don't even know a whole lot about his game. Um, Donte DiVincenzo, and I'm kind of interested in what you think or what you expect out of the guy that I'm not even going to call Donte DiVincenzo. I'm just going to call him the Big Ragu for the entire year. But what are you expecting from him as a uh, off the bench guard, playmaker, shooter? He's going to have to play some defense, but do you have high expectations for how he's going to fit in with the team?
Uh, yes. Yes, I think. I think that we've mentioned Jermichael Green as
Yes.
the. I think I've mentioned before how the Warriors wanted Patty Mills, how the Warriors wanted Nick Batum, but they end up with Otto Porter Jr.
Mhm.
And someone else I forget, Gary Payton as a 15th guy. But I feel like they hit with those, and now I think that you wanted to re-sign Otto Porter Jr. and Gary Payton, but you end up with DiVincenzo and Jermichael Green. I think Jermichael Green might be able to like actually replicate exactly what Otto Porter Jr. did for us, like almost exactly. That's what my take's gonna be. But I
Wait,
think when
wait,
it
wait,
comes,
wait, 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 wait. You know how big Otto Porter is on this podcast. Let's just be clear that he was a hero in the playoffs for us. So you're basically saying Jermichael Green is going to be heroic for us in the 2023 playoffs.
I don't think Jermichael Green is going to score like 10 straight against the Phoenix Suns on Christmas, but I think Jermichael Green can do a lot of what Otto Porter Jr. did. I think Jermichael Green can stretch the floor. I think Jermichael Green can slot into a really good rebounder, and I think he could be even better on defense than Otto was. Because I don't think
Mhm.
Otto was that good of an on-ball defender. Otto was more of a help defense guy, and then just boxing out to oblivion. I think Jermichael's actually a better defender than Otto is, and we'll see. But when it comes to DiVincenzo replacing Gary Payton, DiVincenzo's a better shooter, but he's just never going to be the on-ball defender that GP is. So I'm wondering if, I feel like TK talks a lot about combining players to match one player.
Mhm.
I think he did that when he was talking about like Oubre or something like, what is Ken Bazemore and Juan Toscano Anderson? That might make up Oubre or something. He talks about that sometimes. I'm wondering if DiVincenzo and someone like Moses Moody year two can combine into what Gary Payton provided. Now, I don't think if Moody becomes an on-ball stopper, like, oh my, that would be insane. But I think I'm looking more at Moody to be a passing lanes guy, with the long wingspan. or maybe it ends up being Ryan Rollins that steps up and is able to be the on-ball defender, because we've heard a lot about the wingspan that he has, right? Isn't he like 6'3" or 6'2" with like almost a 7-foot wingspan? Like
Mhm.
that stuff helps in defense, being able to poke it out of a defender's hands, like GP was so good at, because GP has such a long wingspan. So I know we're not talking about GP, but I'm looking more at DiVincenzo as a replacement for GP. So I'm just wondering, I don't think he's going to replace him defensively. I think he'll be better offensively for sure. GP was good at the dunker spot, but DiVincenzo is a really good shooter. And I think he'll flow in that offense. I think he'll be good for us offensively, but I just want to see what he's going to bring to the table defensively.
All right, if I was to ask you what you think the best 3-point percentage the Big Ragu has ever shot at the NBA level, what's your number?
35.
No, it's actually better than that.
Nice.
He shot 38%
Perfect.
in the 2021 season. And yeah, at almost 7 a game he took, and he made, we're at the point with a lot of these guys where they actually take more threes than twos, and that's definitely his game.
Yeah.
Um, in the per 36, because he's not a guy who's a starter necessarily, or that he plays a ton of minutes. Actually, you know what? He did start in the 2021 season for Milwaukee. He started all
Yeah. No,
66 games.
there was a talk around, because he went down. I don't think he was available for the majority of the playoffs, if at all the playoffs. I'm trying to remember, but there was a talk on like, damn, the Bucks are really gonna miss DiVincenzo in this
Mhm.
finals appearance against the Suns. So I think he's a really good addition.
So the one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is his ability to finish, because so if we last year, we'll look at these numbers a little bit differently because there's some injury stuff involved. But in his best season, which was the 2021 season where he started 66 games, he shot, like I said, 38% from 3-point land. He shot 48% from two, but he was only taking 4 a game, so not shooting more threes than twos. But last year, he shot 34% from 3, 37% from 2. Overall, he shot 35% from the field, and that's in the combined Milwaukee and Sacramento games. So that is quite the difference there. Now, he improved big time in free throw shooting last year, so he's getting to the line a little bit more, but I don't understand why the finishing percentage of the twos was so low. That's something that we may have to kind of dig
Oh
through a
yeah,
little
what
bit
was his
for
injury?
statistics.
If it's like a knee or like a foot, or maybe finishing at the rim, exploding, having explosiveness, that could be tied to the injury.
I feel like you just exposed us for not knowing what his injury was.
I don't know
I'm,
what the injury
I'm
was.
trying to find it.
But to your point, I don't know how important it will be for him to shoot twos. To be honest, like I don't know how important the finishing aspect is going to be from
Well,
what
I
we
mean,
need
but
from
you
him this
just
year.
said GP2, right?
Yeah, yeah,
GP2 was finishing at the rim at a high level, which is what also made him valuable. It does not look like DiVincenzo is going to be that type of player. He's going to be more of a shooter, and
yeah.
from deep. So we'll see. The projection for Basketball Reference has him at per 36 minutes. They have him at 7 rebounds a game, 14 points, 4 assists. So that is the other thing, is that even when he wasn't playing a ton, his per 36 for rebounds and assists was pretty darn good for a shooting guard. So it looks like he's a little bit more scrappy when it comes to actually, getting in there and rebounding and such. But they also do not project him to shoot as well from the 3-point line as his career best is, which is kind of weird, because you would think that with the Warriors he'll probably get more open shots, but Basketball Reference says no.
And they're not always right. I think that DiVincenzo is a Farhan Zaidi project. I think he's like Otto Porter Jr. I
Can't
think
play
you take
defense?
No, I think you take a guy that, geez, I think you take a guy that, needs a little bit of bump and a little bit of revitalization in his
Hmm.
career. DiVincenzo, maybe not as much, but because, he was drafted in the Ayton year. So that wasn't too long ago. But, you know, I think that it works with the Warriors because of how the Warriors run their offense. And, Warriors have made guys like Jordan Bell, like who was the center? Damian Jones. I don't know. Keep looking down. They made Alfonso McKinney look like an NBA player for, I don't know, 37 games of that one year. Like, I think when you play with these guys, especially with Steph, and you play the offense and you just buy into the system, something that Kelly Oubre Jr. was not able to do, I think it'll totally benefit him. And I think DiVincenzo is someone who will buy in, similar to how Otto Porter Jr. bought in, because Otto Porter Jr. was a max guy on the Wizards at some point. Like
Hmm.
there was big hopes for that guy, and then injuries, and then he just really wasn't that kind of guy, that type of player. And then he ends up on the Warriors, and he's able to be a really valuable role player. I think that DiVincenzo is looking to get that going to the Warriors, and I think signing to the Warriors shows that he'll buy in.
So the injury that you were talking about in the playoffs was a tendon injury in his left foot, which then became a torn ligament in his left ankle. So that is what caused him to miss the playoffs. And then heading into last season, I don't think he played until Christmas, just rehabbing the ankle.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some issues where, he'd turn an ankle during a game and, there's a little bit of worry. And then, uh,
Stephen Curry arc.
yeah, yeah, right. But it sounds like as of, when he came back, it doesn't look like he had issues anymore, but something just to keep an eye on. So, whenever Steph starts limping, we all kind of know what happened. And so I'm sure the same thing will happen with DiVincenzo. If he starts limping, everyone's going to go, oh, the ankle, the ankle, the ankle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him as well, because we were talking about Jordan Poole last week and how what he does and how he fills in when Steph and Clay are not playing. He all of a sudden becomes maybe the top scorer. If Steph is off the court, maybe the top scorer becomes Jordan Poole. If Clay is off the court, Jordan Poole becomes the second most important scorer on the court. With DiVincenzo, it's going to be interesting to see how much he plays with Jordan Poole, because if he plays a lot with Jordan Poole, they become a small backcourt. Jordan Poole's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. If he plays next to Steph, they're going to be a small backcourt. Steph's going to have the ball a lot. If they play some interesting 3-guard lineups where, maybe he does get to play with Clay, I don't know his game enough, and we'll have to see once the preseason starts and we can actually see him on the floor, what he excels at. It's going to be, I'm interested to see how they utilize him, what lineups they put him in. Can you play Clay, and Steph together? Can you play he and Jordan together? Like those are going to be little interesting things. And then, we haven't even mentioned Moody in this thing, because Moody's sort of built more like the quintessential shooting guard, because he's tall and he's big and he's strong. So can you play DiVincenzo and Moody together? And then does that mean DiVincenzo handles the ball a little bit more? Those are the questions. I don't know, but I'm just curious because he adds some depth to the backcourt, but he doesn't add depth in the same way that a bigger, more sort of traditional shooting guard would. Because what is he? Is he 6'3"?
I would guess 6'3" or 6'4".
Yeah, I think he's 6'3", 6'4". You're right, 6'4". So
Closing a
6'4"
square.
is a little bit bigger, but essentially, he and Steph, he's probably an inch and a half taller than Steph, and he's probably an inch shorter than Jordan Poole. So that's kind of where he fits on the height there. Yeah. So next week we'll probably talk a little bit about JaMychal, and then once the season starts, once the preseason starts, hopefully we get enough of PB&J and Ryan Rollins on video, so we can actually see what they look like. Because I don't know if you listened to Plus Minus, but Kawakami was saying how that's kind of the wild card, is you just want to see those guys out on the court.
Yeah. And Plus Minus was almost like a debrief episode of TK show with Bob Myers.
Yeah,
That was fun.
that's pretty much what it was. And the Bob Myers that now since you do podcasts, I'm sure you kind of hear the questions or you hear the answers a little bit differently than if you didn't. But Bob Myers, how many times did he say, "Well, Tim, you would know better than most," right? Like Bob is one, he trusts Tim. He's been on Tim's show a bunch of times. He knows that Tim's going to ask him tough questions. They're going to be fair. There's going to be no cheap shots. But Bob, I also sense Bob is kind of this guy who doesn't want to just say, "I'm smarter than everybody." This, his resume backs up how good he is at his job. But
Yeah.
it's almost like, he seems just like a curious guy. Like, I would kind of wonder what Tim thinks about this. I'm interested in what Tim thinks about this. Tim, you know this team better than anybody else. Well, I'm interested in your take. So I found that to be pretty interesting.
And he's also like pretty salesman-y. Like,
Yeah.
he's a sports agent. You gotta be that. That's kind of how I thought when he was like trying to boost up Tim.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it is an effort on Myers's part to make Tim comfortable, and then the conversation is more to Myers's liking. It's not just, sports reporter, interviewer digging deep. It's no, we're two pals that we could do this over a beer, and it's more of a conversation. So it's really it's a good tactic by Bob. I would just crack up, and I'm sure Tim cracked up every time. Inside Tim probably cracked up, but the media relationship with the GMs and with the coaches, like, because he has Kerr on all the time as well, so they have to enjoy doing it because it's more for the Athletic than it is for them personally. Because what does Bob Myers care if the fan base is going to like him or not? They're gonna like him based on if the team does well. So
Yeah.
very, very interesting though. That made me think a little bit, especially because you got to talk to somebody who does this for a living. So but yeah. Short show for today, which is totally fine because we're kicking into gear next week already. Like, football season just started, and we have to start thinking about Warriors basketball like really, really soon, which is nuts.
Yeah, maybe doing this on Thursdays at 5:15 immediately when the Thursday football game starts might not be the best for live viewers.
But it's on Amazon. We'll see how many people are watching on Amazon, because if you don't have Amazon Prime, you can't watch the game unless you're in the local market.
Oh, damn.
See, you didn't even know that. This is what I'm talking about. This is why you need to be reading all of the stuff so you know what's going on. Nah, actually, the sports business stuff is like the most interesting things that I listen to and I read pretty much every day is just on the sports. Because, the whole Amazon gimmick is Amazon Prime. Everyone's got Amazon Prime now. But you can't just turn it on to your Hulu or your local, your broadcast station. You literally have to go into the Amazon app to watch the game. And I don't know about you, but if I'm watching my team, then I'm not changing the channel at all. But if I'm just watching a random team and the game is boring, I'm going to flip out of there and go watch something else. But you got to stay in that Amazon app. It's not easy to go back in to then get back to the game.
Is Sherman a broadcaster or an analyst?
I mean, they're pretty interchangeable these days, right? Like,
yeah.
I know
he's
I'm
signed with Amazon, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he's an analyst, but I think he does. Well, we'll see. Today's the first game. I think he does like the pregame and the postgame, maybe in the halftime. Where
he's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's a smart guy. So
yeah.
But yeah, Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit on Amazon. So we'll see. The numbers that they do on that are going to be interesting, and not that it necessarily matters, but the NBA, when their TV deal is up, I'm sure they're going to be talking to Apple TV.
Yeah.
They're going to be talking to Amazon. They're going to be talking to YouTube TV, and all of these tech content creating companies. They want a piece. Like Apple TV's got the Friday night MLB game, which seems like it's like that was probably the last TV package possible, but they had to get in somewhere. I'm
Mhm.
sure this is going to affect the NBA at some point too. Not saying that, in order to watch the NBA, you're going to have to download an app. I think they will have a cable presence, but there may be more packages that get offered
Mhm.
to a Google or to an Apple. And then in order to watch that stuff, you may have to have the app. Like I know you had that League Pass thing that turned into a fiasco for you. But imagine instead of being able to watch League Pass through the NBA app, Amazon's like, or Apple's like, no, we want it through our app and we're going to pay you more so that we can have it on our app and we can raise our subscriptions. It could be stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we already talked about what's on the BAM this week for basketball. You got your interview there, which is really cool. What about football and baseball pods?
Football, they're just releasing after every Monday Night Football game and covering the week. You should listen because my buddy Eric is just a very funny guy and he's pretty interesting to listen to. Big Raider fan, so he's always just like a sad guy too. So I think it just makes the pod better. Baseball, we had a guest on. We talked to someone who does the Locked On Orioles show. That
Mm-hmm.
was fun. That was the last baseball podcast that came out.
Well, so are you really? Is that going to be your team? You're rooting for the playoffs, or
aren't the
you're just
Orioles like out of it now? Like,
are they? I don't know.
because it was between them and the Blue Jays to get that last spot. That was the most realistic, and the Orioles just dropped like 2 out of 3 games to Blue Jays recently, and the Orioles seem to have lost like a ton to the Red Sox, and Blue Jays seem to be rolling. I don't know what the record is now, but it was within like 4.5 games last time we
That's a
talked.
bummer.
Yeah,
That's a bummer. Yeah, the Orioles are 4.5 out of the wild card.
they still do have a series, I think, again with the Blue Jays, but they just need to, talking to that guy, I kind of learned their schedule. They need to like kill these Red Sox. Like they had 7 games against the Red Sox. I think they have a couple games against the Nationals. They have like a game against the Yankees. Like there's some bad teams in there that they could try to get it.
I guess Tampa is actually below Toronto now because Toronto
Oh wow.
had a pretty good week. Yeah. So, interesting. Yeah. So cool. I'm glad to hear it. And maybe next week we'll even have a little bit of an NBA 2K review. I'm not sure I like the gameplay as much as I liked last year's so
Everyone's
far.
saying this is like the best one, but I feel like they say that a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. The controls are a little less responsive. I don't know. I have to play with it a little bit more, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll have a little bit of a review on 2K next week. So, all right, that's it from here. Thanks for folks who are listening on the podcast feed. Subscribe and leave us a review if you can. The YouTube channel, please give us a subscribe on the YouTube. And, if you go to the BSPN shows Twitter at BSPN shows, I have a tweet that is pinned that shows all of the communities that we run on Facebook as well. So this podcast has a community, a Warriors community. The We Want Winners has a 49ers community. Thompson to Clark has a Giants community. So you can join all of those groups if you want to support the shows and just talk with like-minded sports fans. All right. So for Bry, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.